Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Shauna Dingman and I am broadcasting from Elevate Women's Health Centre in Sunderland, Ontario. I'm so glad you could join me tonight. I want to talk to you today about a very specific genetic test that can help unlock some of the mystery around teen depression and other mental health challenges. If you suffer from depression yourself, you probably know just how frustrating it is to get good answers as to why you're suffering from it and how to heal from it, or more importantly, how to be able to live your life not being controlled by your depression. But when you have a child or a teenager who's struggling with any kind of mental health issue, like depression, the angst that you feel as a parent, the worry that you have every time you leave the house and they're alone in the house, you wonder, is everything going to be okay when I get back? Or even just leaving them inside the house, but up in their room by themselves. Parents it's horrible to wonder if they've been up there for an hour, are they okay? So it's one thing to suffer from it yourself. It's entirely a different story to deal with it with your teen. And the reality is our medical system is simply not well equipped to handle this kind of health challenge. We seem to be left with more answers or more questions than we leave with answers, and it's frustrating. You know, depression is just a word that encompasses a whole bunch of different symptoms, and how you experience it may be very different from how your teenager experiences it, which may be very different from how your mom experienced it, which may be different from how your child's friend experiences it. Depression it's a very specific health challenge. Everybody has it very differently, and yet we seem to really only have one way of dealing with it in the healthcare system that we have. So what we have is a lot of guesswork for treatment based on just how a person reports their symptoms. And so the approach to treatment is all the same. But what if there is a way that you could actually get a window into what is going on in your child's brain chemistry? What if, amidst all the million biochemical pathways that were in there, what if you could see which ones aren't working well and where the gap is, and then know what to do to fix it because of that? This is what we do in our office. We specialize in care for women and children, and in particular for mental health issues like depression. We use a specific genetic test that looks at 55 clinically relevant genes. What I mean by that is we're not looking to see whether your child's depression runs in the family. We know that just from what you report to us. We are looking at specific genes that affect a person's health and how their brain functions on every level. And the information that we can get about your health from this 55 gene test is phenomenal. So in the case of teen depression, what we typically find is there are two major problems. The first problem is that the brain itself, it has many different pathways for fuel, but what can happen is the genetic code for many of those pathways to just simply fuel the brain aren't working properly. So the brain ends up spending way more energy just helping that child get through the day, helping that teenager deal with just the realities of life than it normally would have to. And so at the end of the day, there's nothing left over for the brain to actually create the neurotransmitters and the other things that help to work on mood. So what I mean by that is, from sort of a survival mode perspective, the brain only has so much bandwidth. The brain only has so much bandwidth to deal with just helping it do the things that it needs to do, that it doesn't have any more bandwidth left over to deal with the mood neurotransmitters. So the second problem that teens who experience depression often have is that the actual genetic pathways that create the neurotransmitters themselves are often broken. So let me tell you what I mean by a broken gene. The clinical word for it is a single nucleotide polymorph, or a SNP for short. And just for lack of a better way of explaining it, it's a broken gene. And when there's a broken gene or a SNP there, a process that is normally supposed to happen, it now can't happen. And so whatever was supposed to be the end result of that process, like for example, the production of serotonin, it can't happen normally. And that's often why teens experience depression. So let me use a specific example. I have a patient, she's a teenager, she suffers from, I would say, not consistent bouts of depression. So she can be very, very happy for many days or weeks, and then all of a sudden she'll have days where she's really down in it. And what we found when we did her genetic testing is she doesn't lack the ability to produce serotonin per se. Her problem is that she has lots of dopamine. So you've probably heard of the neurotransmitter or the brain chemical dopamine. She has lots of that, but she doesn't create the enzyme. So she has a SNP or a broken gene for the pathway that allows her to create the enzyme that breaks dopamine down in order to create serotonin. So in her case, what we do is we supplement her with that enzyme that allows her to use all that dopamine that she has, break it down, and create the serotonin naturally. And serotonin, as you probably know, if you're in the realm of depression, serotonin it's kind of a happy neurotransmitter. It's a happy brain chemical. So that's what I love about this 55 gene test. So as a healthcare practitioner, there's not a whole lot of guesswork going on. We can see the genetic coding, we can see where the deficits are, and what we do is where there is a broken genetic code, we create a bypass around it so that that pathway can naturally happen. We're healing the cells. We're actually working to heal the body and support the weakness that's there. We're healing the problem and not just chasing the symptoms. And the results that come from that have been absolutely phenomenal. And you know, the great thing about this test is that you don't have to be in my office in order to get it. We can actually do it virtually. So I have a patient right now who's in Sicily and I live in Canada, and we can make it work no problem. Listen, teen depression, especially if it's severe, is one of the worst things that we can deal with as parents. If you have any questions about teen depression or about the 55 gene test and whether or not I can help you, just ask me. I would love to help. This is Dr. Shauna Dingman from Elevate Women's Health Center. Have a wonderful day.